The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
All right, it's episode number 93. It is 245 days till the man burns as of this recording. And holy shit, it's 2019. Or at least it will be by the time you're listening to this episode, I think. We are back after a short holiday break. There's been a lot going on in my life and in our team's lives. All good things, mostly good things, all like 98% good things. All kinds of excellent shit is happening. I've been feeling this internal energy shift. And up until this last burn, I think I've told you guys some of this story a little bit. I've been employed as a full-time photographer for a public agency, which meant that I had all kinds of insane access to high security clearance places while getting paid a competitive salary with health benefits. As a fucking photographer. You know how nuts that is? It was pretty nuts. So of course I was like, wow, this is pretty much the dopest thing any struggling artist could possibly ask for. I should quit. And I did. Because I am super duper smart and make good life decisions. I kid. I don't regret the decision whatsoever. It's been pretty magical. But it did lead to some major shifts in my internal energy, and I had not prepared for a bunch of them, I think. Now, I've been such a workaholic for so long that this new way of scheduling my day, where I get to decide where every minute of the day is allocated, is taking some getting used to. So I have to manage my own decision-making process so I don't get completely burned out from decision paralysis, which happens every day when you make like 10,000 decisions. So I don't know. It's funny. When I had a director giving me direction, I kept wanting to throw a tantrum and scream, "Stop telling me how to live my life!" And now that I'm doing whatever I want with my day, I'm spending a chunk of that time expanding my team and finding new people to manage various projects. So I'm basically running around asking people, "Hey, can you please tell me how to live my life?" Like that's been a lot of my day. Self-discipline has never really been the challenge. The weirdly hard part has been the experience of leaning into the creativity and like really actually enjoying the process. Like just even putting together this show and really digging away at what we're going to say in the intro and how we're going to organize the cover. All these kind of little things. The creativity is flowing like it never has. It's been really, really amazing. But then there's always that like little fucking voice that pops up in the back of our heads that kind of pokes you and goes like, hey, what about the rent? Hey, what are you going to do with that little tooth sensitivity if it turns out to be a root canal? Hey, what do you do if you don't make enough money to pay your taxes this year? Hey, what if, I don't know. Anyway, TLDR, life's dope and super fucking weird. And today's interview is really like a perfect example of something I got to do because I goddamn well felt like it. And one of the many reasons that I ended up leaving the job was so that I could focus more on doing this show and really like take it to the next level. So this was part of the long laundry list. And today's show is a perfect example of how that played out. I wanted to get this interview with El Nino and today's fabulous guest, who you're going to hear in just a second. So producer Lee booked the show, and I fucking drove up to LA on a school night and sat in Nino's living room and chatted about Burning Man on a school day because I felt like it. And it was awesome. And that's been a lot of what I've been doing. Nino has been recommended multiple times as an interview subject in the past year. And I'd never actually personally met him. Nobody from our team had either. But we finally went ahead and moved forward with making this show happen. So I actually got to meet Nino recently. It was at this past year's Utopia, the San Diego Regional Burn. And I'm in the middle of taking drunken photos for the media team. The photos weren't drunk, I was. And this past couple of years, I've been taking I've been photographing all the art projects at the event as my volunteer contribution to Utopia. So that's what I was doing. And anyway, I'm in the middle of doing that when my friend Essie comes and grabs me and says that she wants to introduce me to someone. And by the way, fun side note, Essie is an Oklahoma City firefighter who works with an organization called Yoga for Warriors, where they bring yoga to firefighters and law enforcement. And we've been trying to make that a show. We just haven't been able to make that happen. But how fucking rad is that? Anyway, so I follow her to the person she wants to introduce me to. And it turns out to be Nino, the person who's been getting recommended as a guest on the show. And we've been, kind of crossing paths multiple times. And then she just out of nowhere says, hey, I want you to meet somebody. And there it is. So in the following weeks, we communicate a bunch till we zero in on a date. And during that time period, we also discovered that this photo that I'd taken of his art piece a couple of years back, before I knew him, before I even knew about the art piece, was one that the San Diego leadership had printed and given as gifts to organizers. And he's actually in the photo. So we spent a couple of weeks just emailing and texting and geeking out about all the synchronicity that had brought us together. So that's where you, dear listeners, get dropped into our conversation. A couple of hippies waxing poetic about the universe. When we start recording, we're chatting about the passing of Nino's beloved golden retriever, Chowder, which leads to talks of grandmas and the inspiration that Nino has received from the women in his life. And that's, by the way, where the title of today's episode stems from. And stems is kind of a pun. You'll see. We'll go back to Nino's childhood and his upbringing in Puerto Rico, his life with his parents and his siblings. We follow Nino to the United States, where he continues on his creative journey, and how the art he was creating moves from the page into the physical world. And of course, that's the kind of artist that you know him at. You know him as the person who makes big physical things, but he started out with lots of drawing and illustrations. His first piece was Got Framed. That's the one that I happened to shoot at Utopia. And his big project was, of course, Mukaru. That is the giant wooden owl that you might have watched burn in 2017. So the build lead, by the way, for Mukaru was Mr. Scott Froschauer, who's from episode 85 of this show. And Nino is... so anyway, after that year's burn, 2017, Nino is flying high after the success of Mukaru, his amazing project, and Burning Man 2017 and all that jazz. And that's when the Category 5 hurricanes touched down in his native home of Puerto Rico. And that's all the setup I want to give you. The star of today's show is the impossible not to love Nino. And I think a running theme behind today's episode is all about transitions. Nino's transition between Puerto Rico and the United States, the transition of art from various mediums, the work that we do at the burn and how that can transition into the default world. My transition, that's the shit that I just blabbed about in that opening. And of course, the transitions that all life will inevitably experience, be they our grandmas or our animal companions. Mukaru was burned on Playa, but he's going to be doing his best impersonation of a phoenix in the coming year. So that's the story we're kicking off 2019 with. You got to listen to this whole thing. It's really great. And speaking of transitions, after the conversation, do stick around for an excellent set filled with many, many transitions by Tony Wynot and Kate Stein, which was recorded at the 1001 Nights Camp at Burning Man 2018. So that's going to be playing after our conversation is over. Stick around for that. It's really, really wonderful. I've been jamming out to it. Today's episode is entitled 91 Roses. I felt like there was also a numbers thing happening on this episode. 1001 Nights, 91 Roses. Oh my God, I've been seeing 1111 everywhere. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome It's a burner podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was the fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no name.
You're like going through like deleting photos. Do I need this one? Do I need this one?
Well, now it has got to a place that it goes into large attachment panels. I don't know if you have them, but
Yeah. Well, you can go and see like what your largest attachment files are. Yeah.
and then so I just basically
But then I'll go through there and I'll delete a bunch, and it still doesn't have room because it needs time.
More come.
There you
More going in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like getting this like banter in the beginning. Is it
Okay,
because
gotcha.
Is it because you want to prepare for a selfie?
Hmm?
Yeah. I know.
Of course.
I've
I want to take a picture of us actually
Yeah.
doing this. This is amazing.
I keep trying to remember to do them and hashtag them burner selfie.
Okay. Burner selfie.
Yeah. No,
All
burner
right.
yeah, and like
Let's see.
it's a hashtag that's hilariously not used enough.
All right. I think
Yeah.
we got room.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
so
we're
he-
doing this? Okay.
Yeah. Wait, let's see if the
Let me
equipment.
suck in my gut. Are you getting a good angle?
The equipment.
I think
Is that good?
yeah, it looks I mean there's a lot of yeah, so get more of you in there.
More? Oh, you want view?
No, more of you.
Oh, more me. I thought you said view.
No, more of you.
All right.
I think you got to turn it more towards you. There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Yay.
Perfect. All right.
We did it.
We got ourselves a selfie.
Yes.
All right. El Nino.
Hello.
Hi.
How you doing?
Oh my God, you have an amazing radio voice.
Awesome.
This is already really good.
Oh, great. Happy to hear that.
Yeah. So what were we talking about before we started recording? We were talking about grandmas.
Oh, yeah. So we did. We
Yeah.
did. Well, you brought up the fact that you had a memory that just popped into your mind.
Yeah.
And interesting enough.
Well, because you were telling me about your squirrels.
Oh, yes. Yes. So.
And I was like, and it came up because like today, right before I sat down to eat, I actually like kind of said out loud to my grandma, like, hey, I today would be nice. I mean, I know you're there watching over me, but it would be nice to like get a sign.
Yes.
And then as soon as I get over here, we're talking about squirrels. And the story that comes up is when I was chasing squirrels and tried to grab one and it bit me and I was with my grandma. And it's one of the memories of my grandma. And then you said that got framed,
Yes.
dedicated to your grandma.
But to go back for a moment, the reason why we're talking about squirrels is because so I recently, my loving dog of 15 years old passed away, and weird enough, she transitioned, and I started seeing squirrels around the property.
Yeah.
And one in specific that I named Morning now eats from my hand, and I feel like, my chowder is manifesting herself or channeling herself through the squirrels.
Chowder was the name of is it a golden retriever?
A golden retriever, yes. my
Esperanza chowder.
Esperanza chowder.
Important.
Yeah, Esperanza chowder Alicea.
Yeah.
She's somehow some way Latina.
Yeah.
So the squirrels that now I have in the backyard brought up this conversation where you're talking about that. One of them bit you, and then we talk about grandmas.
Yeah.
And what I was explaining to you is that, interesting enough, my first art installation at Burning Man was God framed, which is the gold frame with roses motif surrounding it. My grandma's name was Rosamelia. So I made all the rose designs on her name, and God Frame was basically dedicated to her for her 91st birthday.
On her name, like the rose is actually designed around her name.
Well, her first name is Rosamelia.
Okay.
So
okay,
Rosa,
gotcha. That's how the rose is found in.
Yeah, rose. Okay. Yes. So the roses are for Rosamelia.
And you said there's 91?
91 roses, yes. 91 roses around God Framed. And I'm really glad there was actually at one point we were not even going to bring God Frame to the playa in 2015. But I told myself, no, I got to do it now. It's, I don't know how much longer I have with her. I don't want to wait. And I'm glad that I did because she transitioned right after her 92nd birthday.
Wow.
So she got to see God Framed.
Yeah.
I was able to share with her. Interesting enough, I told her, hey, Grandma, look what I made in your name. And, there's 91 roses for you, for Rosamelia. And my grandma, without missing a beat, said, but my full name is Rosamelia. I'm like, I know, Grandma. I use some of your name to use to inspire me this. But that just gives you a little good scoop of who my grandma was, and she was so amazing soul in my life. And but we did create a 92nd rose. It was about 4 feet by 4 feet rose that and I made it into a collage with pictures of her whole legacy, her family, her daughters, her grandsons, great grandsons, grandkids, and I placed that rose for one day on God Framed on 2016. I brought God Framed back in 2016, and this time was framing the temple, and I put my grandma's rose in that temple, and I actually watched it burn.
Wow,
into eternity.
Wow.
That same year I designed Mukaro, and interesting enough, the backstory of Mukaro is that I had applied for Mukaro to be in 2016, but I didn't get it. I didn't get the honoraria, but I decided, you know what? I really feel this project, it's meant to be at Burning Man,
right.
And I reapply, and then I got it.
Wow.
And that one, Mukaro, is dedicated to my mom. And well, it's to teachers and educators everywhere. If you remember going inside, it was all a school memorabilia style. And but one teacher in particular was my mom, who was a teacher in Puerto Rico. I mean, she's retired now.
Right.
She's still with us, thank God. But,
Right.
She was a teacher for more than 45 years, and I wanted to do something. I just feel like we should dedicate stuff, not after they transition.
Right.
I rather them enjoy it and see it that somebody actually thought of them while they were here.
Yeah. See the divine in all things now rather than waiting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's completely something that I've been exploring in my my personal journey as well. But when you're describing that it's I guess like the word, there's the word like dedication, and then there's inspiration.
Correct.
There's channeling the energy of, but it immediately just made me think of, maybe it's just something that just generally exists more in like maybe the feminine energy, where it makes me think of feminist art, where kind of like the idea behind it is that the personal is political.
Yeah.
Right. So here's this piece that is it stands for educators everywhere, but it really started with something very, very personal, which is your mother. Like, here's this very personal person, but then here's this larger impact statement that it goes with.
Absolutely. Well, it's people ask me where was the inspiration coming from, in the fact that it's an owl and teachers, and I explained to people that I grew up where my mom had owls in her classroom either with a diploma or the graduation hat. And owls have always been part of like something that I saw and related to teachers.
Really? Okay.
And that's the main reason why it's an owl. And then I name it Mucaro. Mucaro is the Taino Indian, native Indian of Puerto Rico. And that's how they named the owl, which is a screech owl. But in Puerto Rico, we don't call it a screech owl. We call it a Mucaro.
That's like a much sexier name than screech owl.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I wonder if animals hear their names in different languages and go, "Oh man, I really like the Puerto Rican version of my name way better than the American version." Screech owl.
The screech owl. Yeah.
I want to go back for a while, and we're gonna come back. We're gonna go back to like the beginning of your story, and we're gonna come back to where we started off here. This is perfect. This is like how movies start out with like earlier action scene, and then they go back to the beginning of the story. I like it when stories start this way.
Sounds good.
So what was sort of like you grew up in Puerto Rico, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I basically have all my childhood and my youth. I moved to United States when I was 19, turning 20.
Okay. Do Puerto Ricans refer to it as moving to the United States, or is that something you're saying now?
Well, you know what? We do. We do because to anybody that lived in the island, we lived in an island. It's really interesting. I mean, I'm not trying to, compare to anybody else that lives in New York or grew up in Florida, but it's just a different lifestyle. It's just a different, you encounter a complete different environment than living in the States.
Right.
So yes, I never lived in New York, so I'm not a New Rican, but I lived in the island, and I moved to United States basically to go to college.
Okay, so you were about 19, 18,
19 to turning 20, actually, 20.
Okay. So until then, you were. Tell me about life over there. What was it like living there? What was it like going to high school there?
Now that I've grown and I hope that I'm a little wiser, I see it as like, what an amazing childhood I had, because living in an island, it's like, oh, what are you doing today? Let's go to the beach. And there's beaches everywhere, and to just be hanging out in the sun and in the ocean. And that was an option that you had to do every day. You didn't have to like drive hours to it or travel miles to it. And that aspect of it was pretty amazing. So
this is interesting because that's what you're describing. I had a very close friend in high school who also had moved back and forth and lived there a lot. And she was describing the same thing about the culture there. But I mean, we're here in Southern California. We're not that far away from the beach. Why does it feel like it's so much further away?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I have hung out here at the beach here, and it's nothing compared to the beaches in Puerto Rico.
What is it like? What's the difference?
It's the water is warm. The sand is softer. I go now to Puerto Rico and I get into the ocean, and the first thing I'm like really happy to look at, look down and you can see your toes moving in the sand. The water is just a lot more welcoming.
Is it not as busy?
Yeah, well, it's not. No, it's not. Used to be when we were growing up. It was quite busy, but now it has, especially after the hurricane, things have changed quite a bit. And
I would imagine.
Yes, I was just recently there, and I noticed a big difference on the population that goes and enjoy the beach now as comparison to when I used to grow up there.
Well, they're experiencing such a recent trauma.
Absolutely.
Relaxing, I imagine, is a little bit more difficult.
They find their way. They find their way. But one of the things, like I stayed in the town of Luquillo, and while I was there in Luquillo, we went there for summers. That was our summer location, which is just 35 minutes away from my parents' house. But that's the beauty of it. Like you can just like, oh, let's go and you have their summer by the beach, and it's so accessible. But one thing that I noticed was how many homes beachfront are closed. Some of them abandoned.
Right.
It was very at times very deserted.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you tell me about the earliest time that you remember, like in your childhood, that you have a conscious memory of wanting to create art?
I remember growing up, and instead of being in the track and field classes or the music classes, I was taking the art school classes. And it all started, interesting enough, my dad was watching TV and he had a drink in his hand, a glass, and I just sat across from him and I decided to draw him. Like, I don't know what triggered me.
Do you know how old you were?
7.
Okay.
Yes. And
I'm guessing he's drinking rum.
you know what?
Or a beer?
He liked Toronjin. That was his drink, Toronjin. He doesn't drink anymore, but Toronjin, I remember clearly that was his drink of choice.
Yeah.
And
So you start drawing him.
I started drawing him. I finished drawing him, and I went and just, like, it's 7-year-old. Look, Dad, look what I did. And my dad, I remember he was just really quiet, and then he called my mom, and my mom looked at it, and then they just had this conversation with me. Are you interested in pursuing? I think that you have a talent here. Would you like to take classes, or we'll investigate and find out.
Wow.
Some
like the complete opposite of a lot of our experiences. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Well, it's interesting because they tried gymnastics. That didn't really work very well. We did swim team. That was kind of fun. As we're growing up, parents like to find hobbies or where they can keep the kid active or things like that. So I started going to after school art classes. And I remember it was in this mall in Carolina, that I took these drawing classes, and little by little, and then once I was in high school, in junior high and high school, just taking the drawing classes, the painting classes. And once I finished, I remember you actually said something really interesting, how it's the opposite sometimes, because I do feel that my parents did see a talent in me, but they also gave me this whole speech about maybe you're not going to make good money in art, or like start figuring out what can you actually be doing with your art.
Right.
And that's why I went to graphic design school.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. A lot of artists end up in graphic design because same reason that I did. It was like, oh, I can still go to work in a tie.
Correct.
But I can also create. But I think it's interesting. I have a bias because like the listeners of the story have heard me bitch enough about my parents on this, but they were immediately supportive though, and like to me that sounds like if I was in that situation as a parent, that's what I would like to believe that I would do, which is immediately support, but then also like have an adult conversation about how are you going to pay rent.
Yes.
What kind of work was your father in?
My dad was a credit investigator at a furniture store.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the job that probably a lot of people didn't like that person to be.
You're never happy to hear from him.
No, exactly. Exactly. Then you have to collect money.
Yeah. And your mother was an educator.
And yes, she was.
What grade did she teach?
For most of her life, 3rd grade.
Okay.
And when I moved to that school, I went to a different school from kindergarten to 6th grade. When I moved to the same school where she was a teacher in 7th grade, the people that I actually had gone to school, the people that actually was in my classroom, my mom was their teacher in 3rd grade. So it was quite interesting to be known as Mrs. Alicea's son.
No bullying happened with that.
No, not really. Not really. No. I think, you know, that if there was any bullying, I don't remember it. I don't know if I just blocked it or I didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the latter is a good way to approach it personally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, my mom was very, you know, like she wanted to be our mom.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to cross that line of being a teacher and a mom.
Right.
So she sent all, you know, we're 3 total.
Yeah.
So all 3 kids went to a different school for the elementary school, and then we moved to that school.
What kind of work have your siblings gotten into since?
Oh, they're number people.
Okay.
Yes.
They're more like your dad.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. My sister works, you know, for the headquarters of a bank.
Yeah.
My brother was, you know, like he started a CPA. Now he's working into marketing and distribution around the island. So they've always been, I call myself the brown sheep.
Yeah. I'll go with that.
Yes, exactly.
Might be the brown owl now.
Yes.
And then were you guys all close to your grandma?
Yes, very much. She treated us with so much respect and so much love. And I don't, you know, I until her last days, I remember her always just being my friend, and that's why we were so close to her. And that's also why I wanted to do this piece,
Right.
To inspired by her and her courage and love and kindness. You know, another side story for, you know, she married a very, very dark Puerto Rican man. And back in the days, that was a big no-no. But my grandma was like, I'm in love.
Yeah. She was already pretty progressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and also, you know, like going back to even me being gay, the main reason why I think that there was never an issue whatsoever is I feel that she went through so much on her own by being in love with what back then was so taboo,
Right.
that she didn't want me to go through that kind of process. So there was never any issue whatsoever.
Wow.
About me being gay, or you know, and you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter anyways.
Yeah. That's. I mean, you're a gay artist, so like in any culture, that's like you've already got some roadblocks to deal with, right?
Correct.
Because I mean, I had to deal with like being like a feminine artist. I'm not gay, and I had to deal with a lot of that shit, you know, in Iranian culture. And it's funny because like with ours in Iranian culture, it's not as like. A lot of people like won't hear this oftentimes, but like I got some of that too for having like darker skin. So it was like common in like my upbringing when other kids wanted to taunt or bully. They'd say like, you know, they call me like Indian or Pakistani, you know,
Interesting.
which is funny because I'm like, I would be like, I guess that should be insulting if I was racist, but
yeah. And I think that's one of the lessons that I got from my mom, from my grandma, from Abuela, is that it didn't matter. She knew who she loved, and she loved him until the end, and there was so much respect and so much love around them that when we were even going to visit them, we'll just stay with them, and you know, like my parents sending the kids to grandparents' house, and he treated us with so much love and so much kindness too, that he forever will be our Papa Lolo, you know.
Your grandma that we're talking about was from your mom's side or your dad's?
Correct.
Your mom's
side.
Okay.
Mom's side, yes.
So a lineage of progressive educator types is like almost like what I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah, she was a social service.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, again, like correct me if I'm projecting too much of my own experience, but like it feels to me like a grandparent being accepting of my being a black or brown sheep has even more impact than parents, because you feel like if they're further away from you, like it's an older generation, they should be even more conservative. So like if they're not, it's even more impactful when they're supportive.
Oh no, I totally agree with you 100%. And you know, like my grandma, she always just wanted for me to be me.
Right.
Like there was never an issue with who I am or what how I even through my process of being an artist to now, like struggling, trying to be an artist, as we know, in a very expensive city like Los Angeles. She just continued telling me, say, do you believe in it? I believe in it. If you continue seeing it, I'm seeing it. And that means so much when it comes from someone that is that close to you, that is seeing you since you were a kid.
Yeah.
A baby, probably changed your diapers at one point.
Yeah.
So
Oh, God.
that to me means so much. And that's also going back why I wanted to do something. So, at the same time, it was my 5th year at Burning Man, and I just wanted to try something new and try something different than just doing art in our camp. Or just sharing my art with my community, in the burner community. I really wanted to share it with the rest of the burner community.
Right. This is a world community, in fact. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I could do is like, okay, how can I do this without, because it will be my first time. I already knew how hard it can be on the playa, but I never tried putting art in the middle of the playa.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of scaled down to, Godframe was 12 feet high by 14 feet long. But knowing that I really wanted to do something a little bit more massive
Right.
next.
Right.
That's how I got my feet wet.
Just a little bit more massive.
Yeah, just a little bit.
You got your feet dry and dusty. The opposite. So at like 19, 20, you move. So I'm sorry, that was the other question I wanted to ask. So again, like in your upbringing, you guys referred to it as the United States. What was like the general concept, like the feeling towards the United States, if you had to take a snapshot of it from your perspective, from what did it feel like? Did it feel like you're just moving to a foreign country? Was there, do you remember having a sense of like the political differences between, being Puerto Rican versus like the United States policies? And because all of this is going to come back later when we get into the hurricane stuff.
Yeah. Well, so when I moved to the United States, I never thought that there was a plan in my head that I wanted to finish school here. I didn't, at the time, you're so naive, 19 or 20 years old. You just know what you know at that time. And even though that my experience through figure out what United States was, it was all through TV, movies. One part that I haven't told you yet is that I moved first to Indiana.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
Why Indiana?
I was an exchange. I joined an exchange, national exchange program.
Wow, that's got to be culture shock.
Yes. so that was my first stop, and I finished my degree in Indiana, and I moved to LA basically 2 days after graduation. I was done. I was done. I mean, I enjoyed my experience there.
Stuff was packed already.
It was time.
Yeah.
But to go back to your question, I don't think I had anything else to compare it to, or some sort of gauge, because I was learning. Like when I tell people that I moved to Indiana first, I always get that same reaction that I got from you, but I didn't. I thought that I was moving to United States, and you have to remember Puerto Rico is so small that you're thinking that, I'll just move to Indiana, and you think that Indiana is just like California, it's just like Florida, it's just like New York. And then you learn quickly how, because of the distance, the states, just the scope of how big United States is, we are as different from the East Coast to the West Coast, and vice versa. And
oh God, different parts of Southern California are like different countries sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. I had at that time, my knowledge wasn't that clear on the aspect of like what is happening. But I enjoyed my time in Indiana. I loved it, and it was actually, it made me appreciate. Once I moved to the Los Angeles, it made me appreciate the different kind of cultures, different upbringings, and started like learning also how other people's upbringings are very different than mine.
Yeah. That tell me more about that. So, how old were you when you got to LA?
23.
23. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. 23-year-old artist moving to LA.
Yes.
That's got to be fun.
Yes.
What was that like? What were those years like?
Well, Los Angeles looks a lot different when I was 23, that's for sure. Now I've been in LA for close to 26 years. Giving my age away. I'm 48, proud of it. And it was just very different. It has evolved a lot. The acceptance is a lot bigger and better now. But back then, all I knew, especially as a gay man, it was Hollywood.
Right.
And that was the only place where I felt like I could be free and me and be gay and enjoy that kind of experience. But now I feel that it has evolved in through the city.
Yeah.
And even in the film industry, it's a lot more welcoming than what it was when I first moved to Los Angeles. Back then, everybody always was still talking about the closet cases, everybody's in the closet. Now everybody's out.
Yeah. Now it's cool.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Same thing. I mean, the same thing. There's so many parallels that I constantly see with the experience of being an artist, the experience of being gay, and to some extent the experience of being burner, where there is still such a. Now we're coming out of those times where you had to be in the closet about being a burner.
Yeah.
Now it's like mainstream enough. Now it's like, oh, cool, you go to Burning Man. But there was definitely a long time where like that playa name was protecting your job.
Seriously. Well, I mean, the stereotype that they had in their minds, the people that haven't experienced it, it was always, like what you see sometimes in like the crazy photos or, the bad news too. And there's so much goodness and so much wonderful worlds within the burner community.
Right.
It depends on your interests. Like for me per se, I my interest was art. I was interested in the art and having interesting conversations with different artists. The same thing with like my camp and groups and like I'm sure that this might resonate with a lot of people that might be listening, but you're like having a bonfire in your camp and you have all these wonderful ideas of things that you're gonna do next year on the playa, and they should do this on the playa and and it all takes is execution at the end of the day.
There's so many things that have ended up at Burning Man that started out with like a drunken joke.
That's correct.
Yeah. What kind of art were you creating while you were here in LA? Is it still like illustrations, graphic design work?
I started working in graphic design. Then I got a little sidetracked. I started working in acting and started taking acting classes. I had a minor in theater in Indiana, and I started kind of like exploring, or what they call like got the bug bit me, and had a lot of fun doing so. Created a really fun character called Rent-A-Rican.
Rent-A-Rican?
Yeah, if your parties are too boring, if your parties are not diverse enough, you Rent-A-Rican. And Caliente. And that was a lot of fun. Through that character that I created, I started also being interested in one of the things I noticed is that you get so sidetracked in different jobs or in opportunities, especially here in Los Angeles, because you have to still make the rent, make the mortgage, get some food in your refrigerator. And so you start doing all these jobs that are not part of the industry you want to be part of. So one day I just decided, you know what? I need to stop doing that. I need to start working I want to be part of the film industry. Besides being an artist, I need to start working in the film industry, whatever that takes. So I started working as a PA. I did a bunch of PA jobs. And one of those PA jobs, I was working with the producer, and I suddenly looked into what she was trying to do or set decorate for the shot, and I very nicely, I think, I was like, oh my gosh, I said, hey, I think that might look better on the other side of the camera, and she right away looked at me and said, then do it. And thanks to that opportunity, I started actually doing all the sets for that kind of place.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I did.
What was? Can you say what it was?
Yeah. There was a place called Lunchbox.
Okay.
I think they're still here. And I did Walmart, Smoker's Jam, Gillette.
I'm sorry. What is the title of that? This was
from the beginning. So I started as a PA. Then I started set decorator.
So these were for like commercials or
commercials.
Okay.
BTS,
Gotcha.
behind the scenes kind of things.
Because some of what you were describing when you started, say, like Walmart and stuff, I'm like, you could easily, like, it's like visual merchandisers kind of do that kind of work too, but not in front of the camera.
Yeah, no, I did laydowns for Walmart. So when you went to their website, I would lay down their clothing to look nicer.
Yeah, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I did that, and
you have no idea how valuable that skill set is. Like as a photographer, I constantly need somebody like that
to make them, make the clothing because the clothing is not in the actual person, so you have to like make it look good enough for them to actually want to order it.
Yeah.
So I did that, and that was basically set decorator. Then from there, I started working as a set designer, art director, production designer. And that's what I've been doing now for the last pretty much 5 years.
Wow.
Besides being, doing my art at Burning Man, I work as a production designer here.
And I wonder if the description that you just gave answered what my next question was going to be, which was how the transition happened from creating art on the page to physical structures that you were creating. Because obviously, like Got Frame, we're looking at physical things.
So, yes.
When did you start actually swinging a hammer?
I started swinging the hammer with Got Frame.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. Got Frame was my first swinging the hammer kind of project where I was creating something in that scale.
Okay.
I always been very interested in creating and building and putting things together. So
in production design, like that's the leap I'm trying to connect here.
Yes.
Because before that, illustration, you're acting. And the reason it's making me think of that is because one of the reasons I chose graphic design as my emphasis in art school was because I really just hated getting dirty. So I didn't want to paint. I didn't want to clean up paints. I hated it. I was such a priss. But that's what I was saying is like, so you were like physically doing things now in a physical environment. I imagine that's where production design was, and that kind of bridges that gap.
Well, I started also working on sets. Fake it until you make it, acting like I knew how that wall will be wild and move, and I'll just figure out on my own. I will ask questions, of course, but yeah, it was all through the process of so I started taking, it's a great question. I started giving myself permission. I started giving myself permission to think bigger than just a page on my sketchbook, to start thinking and say, okay, how can I create this that is actually on my page, whether it's for production design or whether it's for the playa.
Right.
The other part that I learned in the process is like, don't be afraid to ask, especially in our burner community. Don't be afraid of ask someone that has a different kind of skill than yours. That means that you actually start creating a team.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that was one of the most valuable lessons that I took from Got Frame, was that it was a small crew. It was 8 of us to bring Got Frame onto the playa, but we all had a skill.
Yeah.
And yes, we can cover each other's skills, but at the same time, if you were something good at this one skill, that was your strength. And we create a team that was able to to make all that happen. In Mucaro, of course, the crew.
It was a lot bigger.
Yes, we were. If I get the number, I hope that I'm getting the number right. But it was 42 of us.
Wow.
There was some few people that we adopted on the playa.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm counting them on the 42 or not.
We'll go with 42. It's the meaning of life.
Yes, that
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. And it was wonderful to see how we created this team of people that were really good at this one thing, but then they might not be as good in other departments, but then there was all these people that were just step up to the plate and create and take over that department for everybody else.
Right.
So
Wow.
that was the I besides how magical was our journey to bring Mucaro to the playa, that one other part that was very magical was what was happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. I'm going to get to that in just a minute.
Yeah.
I want to know, how did you find out about Burning Man? How did that show up in your life?
Oh, wow. All right. So back in my first year was 2011. That was my first year at Burning Man. And my dear friend Sage, she had invited me to Burning Man for thinking between 3 to 4 years in a row. I
You
always
kept saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go one day."
yeah, it's too dusty.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I can deal with.
When is it again?
Yeah. Oh, is it again? Didn't you just invite me? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was, I remember Chin say, there's a room in the RV, and like, I just didn't know if I wanted to go. In 2011, 2010, I had a situation where I was in a long time relationship, and there was a break, and I decided that I needed to discover myself, and I went through many things to find myself, including Kabbalah, including thinking that, oh, I'm going to hike for 4 days and 3 nights to go to Machu Picchu. So I'm looking to that kind of world. And interesting enough, because I'm just researching it, that year that I wanted to go to Machu Picchu, I saved all this money. I'm going to go. I'm just going to go by myself. I'm going to meet with all these people in Machu Picchu. Like the people that guide us. And
Did you do ayahuasca out there?
so no, this is actually the sad part. I've never been yet.
Okay.
Yet.
To Machu Picchu.
What happened was that year, 2011, when I decided that I wanted to go, it was their winter. So I was too late. So I had to wait the following year to try to go to Machu Picchu. So I remember being on my computer, buying my first ticket to Burning Man.
Nice.
Calling my friend Sage, telling her, hey, guess what I'm doing?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm buying my first ticket to Burning Man. This is when would you just buy it?
Yeah. You can call somebody and talk about it as you were buying it.
Yes. And
unheard
right
of.
away, it's like, click, you just bought it. You have a ticket to Burning Man.
That's really funny. I love it. You're like, Burning Man's too hot, and then like Machu Picchu's too cold.
Yes, seriously. So then she, very wise, that's why we call her Sage, a very wise friend of mine. She said, you need to start coming to our gatherings and group meetings so we can you can start introducing yourself to the group and basically finding your voice
Right.
within the group. And I started going to all the meetings and having a great time, meeting amazing people. At the time, I've been in Los Angeles for a very long time, and I had met, this kind of fun, amazing, thriving people yet. So that was a wonderful experience in 2011. Of course, came back, I couldn't get enough of it. I was doing decom here, decompression there, and one thing led to the other, and we started doing murals within the camp to decorate the camp, to make it, a very nice environment. And one day, in front of the fireplace and bonfire. We started talking about ideas to put in the playa. And that was that year that we were talking in the front of the bonfire. I did a mural on the center camp.
Yeah.
My first mural
very cool.
outside my.
For your first year.
No.
This is your second.
That's actually the year that I want to say 2013, 14.
Okay.
I had contacted for my first time people outside my camp to see if they had room on the walls to paint a mural.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, they told me that it was packed, that they had all the people, but to please come to center camp when I arrive, because you never know. And now I
Somebody
realize
doesn't make it.
Yes,
somebody falls through. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Now I know that you never know.
That's
and sure
interesting.
enough, I got a wall.
Hey, so insider tip: if you're a painter listening
Yes.
to this, you should show up to center camp.
Definitely do
might be a
for
spot
sure. You know, but come prepared to have like maybe an idea of what you like to do.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are very inspired and they wing it.
Yeah.
But I will recommend to design it perhaps in your mind and in your head, because some of the materials are very limited. Unless you bring in your own. Do not bring acrylics. They dry really fast.
You know, I feel like, yeah. I feel like if I hadn't ran away from painting my entire life and I did want to do a mural, I feel like I could still, like, even if it got all filled up in center camp, I could find somewhere to do it. Like some camp somewhere would be like, cool, here, we got a wall.
paint.
Yeah.
So
What a fun exercise.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
So that year, that's the year that I got my first taste doing something for the community
Right.
outside my camp. And next year, I was already working with other people to try to get God Frame off the ground. I met some wonderful, wonderful people from the Church Trap, our installation. Thanks to
Rebecca Waite's been on the show.
Yeah. So I met through her.
You met Scott Froschauer.
Met Scott, met my project manager, Tommy. A few people from the crew are from that our installations crew too. I mean, it was just like, it was a very magical experience to bring all these people together and start combining them with the people from my first year.
Right.
A lot of people that were my crew for Mucaro are people that I went camping for my first time in 2011.
Yeah. What was 2011 like for you? Because like you'd been avoiding it for like 3 or 4 years, and now you're there in it.
So it was a theme camp, and we got what is called now a working pass. So we arrived on Saturday. Yes.
What was your camp?
At the time, it was called Identity Farm.
Okay.
It has dissolved from then, and it's now dissolved and evolved, and is part. A lot of people are part of Loveland.
Okay.
Still, Loveland is happening now.
Cool.
We were one of the originators of Loveland.
Yeah.
And so my first year, there was still pretty empty. There was not that many camps out yet. Again, there wasn't as many people as it is now.
Right.
And I remember Sage says, "Do you want to go for a walk?" And sure enough, we walked to the Esplanade. And when I walked to the Esplanade, we were at 4 o'clock or so. And
And
it was
daytime or nighttime?
daytime.
Okay.
And that was the year of the pier.
Yes. Yeah.
The pier was, so that was my first installation that I saw into the Esplanade. Walking into Esplanade, it's like, because we were in that entrance where the pier was. Because then the following year, that's when they added the ship.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I also feel like the pier, it has an aesthetic that I feel like looking at your work is something that you would appreciate specifically.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's your style.
I looked at the pier. I looked at the ship. The following year, the lighthouses. For sure. Even this year, even though that I didn't go, I saw several other installations that remind me a lot of that shack feeling.
Yeah. That's definitely something that aesthetic has found itself on Playa quite a bit. now.
That's true. Yes.
That's interesting. What was the most surprising thing for you your first year that you went?
Oh, that temple.
Yeah. That's the thing you least expected to run into and experience.
Well, for those who were there in 2011, it was just such an impressive temple. And it was also my first time experiencing what I could actually do or experience being part of like the community to bring something to the temple. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a big breakup in my life, and I used that temple as a huge part of me trying to move on.
Right.
And the most interesting part was that all those things that I mentioned, Machu Picchu, Kabbalah, and other things that I tried to find myself, I know that they were all there to be steps for me. But the one thing that finally did it was that temple.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the energy that you're reaching for, and there's these physical things in the world that you thought would be that energy.
I
and then you
remember,
found the energy.
all those feelings of either sadness or rage or anger, they just were gone.
Right.
Completely gone. And this is my experience. I'm not saying that could be for everybody, but my experience was like, that's how powerful it was for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think what you're describing is completely the thing that punches most people in the face, is that you think you're looking for a thing.
Yes.
And then you get there and you're like, oh, this is what I've been looking for the whole time. You know, it's just, this is what's been calling to me.
Yeah, I remember also at night, one of the camp members who's been there before, and he and I were just kind of like, we're hanging, and then he looks at me and said, do you want to go for an adventure? And I said, yeah, of course I want to go for an adventure. So we get on your bike, and we got on the bikes, and we rode our bikes all the way to the trash bin past the temple.
Right.
And one of the things he kept saying to me, don't look back. And we got all the way to the trash fence past the temple, and when I turned around and I saw the magnitude and the lights and how big this place is and how small you look in this place. And meeting people that built the temple while we were actually at the trash fence made it even more special. Playa magic stuff. It started happening.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's gorgeous. It's now you've got me like really thinking about that moment. I wish I'd had that kind of experience. I'm gonna do that to somebody. I'm gonna hap him right on the bike.
Yes,
Tell 'em not to look
definitely.
back.
I highly recommend it for
That's
any
good idea.
And it's just, you want to go for an adventure, because that was definitely an adventure, and we laughed so hard. We were basically kids riding our bikes back, and because we were in such a height of happiness and fun and letting our hair loose, and it was just a lot of fun.
So you've referenced this bonfire a few times, where like the idea for God Frame came about. What was the conversation exactly?
So, interesting enough, I never spoke about it.
Okay.
And the fire, I just listened.
Okay.
I listened a lot in the bonfire, and we giggled, we laughed about possible ideas. That year, my exodus was, I think, 8 hours.
Yeah.
So in the car,
It's about normal.
yeah. In the car, as I'm actually in exodus, that's when I started thinking about an idea.
What was it that people were saying at the bonfire that made you think that? Can you
Honestly,
remember?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Because it was almost like more so jokes,
Right.
and we were laughing about it, and so it never felt like it was a seriousness about it. It was like, oh, this is what we should have next year. We should do this next year. So it was never. I never felt like it was how somebody was saying, oh, you know what, I'm gonna take this idea and go for it. But on my way out of in the Exodus, that's when I thought of. I didn't actually think about God Frame. I thought about another idea. And interesting enough, I'll show you in a little bit the sketches. The the idea was supposed to be placed far away enough from Godframe, so Godframe was framing the original idea.
Interesting. Okay.
What happened was then Godframe took over. yeah.
But you're like, this is enough work.
But you know what? For other artists out there, respect that process, because that sometimes is actually the journey to it. I thought that I wanted to be that idea so bad, but the whole entire time it was Godframe the idea.
What was it going that it was going to be framing?
Oh, I wanted to make all this like wooden trees,
Okay.
with swings on them.
Okay.
So it was supposed to be like a paint by color kind of painting, and the frames were framing that in the background.
Interesting. I like that. No, I'm blanking on it. There's a name for this kind of art where like you kind of move around and then the negative space takes over and you start to see through it and it becomes one piece. Yeah.
It was all about perspective to me.
Interesting. Yeah.
I really wanted to make like a perspective view of people in the frame.
And then
or what they were seeing through the frame.
Right.
But
And then at what point did just Godframe take over?
you know what? It would came. I honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just naturally started kind of happening. Then I started adding the ladders, because at all this it was supposed to just be a frame.
Right.
So I started adding the ladders. I grew up in a park, by a park, a kids park, where they had the monkey bars. And I started remembering the monkey bars. Interesting enough, in my last trip to Puerto Rico, I just saw those monkey bars that inspired Godframed. Then one thing led to the other, and I started asking for help with lighting. I started asking for help, like, how can I build this? And again, I believe that don't be afraid of to ask. It's a huge key to any kind of success, because a lot of people are just waiting and willing to help.
Right. Yeah.
Because at the time,
That's one of the most beautiful experiences that most people have, and it's funny because it's something that's very common between people who have been like lifelong artists versus those who discovered that they're artists at Burning Man. That's like one of the massive things that hits them. You know, I remember the story that I reference most often about this exact topic is, I want to say that the first time I interviewed Halcyon, and the founder of Pink Heart, and he was saying that like the first year that he was building Pink Heart, he kept like walking around thanking everybody, saying thank you so much, and people were like, and this suddenly it snapped in his head. He's like, no, wait a minute, they're not doing me a favor. Everybody's getting something out of this. They're having an experience. They're owning this project. They're having this great thing.
Yes.
You know, so walking around saying thank you is actually kind of arrogant. To some extent, it's like, thank you for doing me a favor to bring my vision to life, you know? But yeah, people get into it, man.
Yes, they do.
Everybody finds like their little part of what's moving them and energizing them.
Well, I'm very grateful to all of them, because it's the thing is, and I said that from the beginning when we were working on Mucaro, and lessons learned from Godframe, that I designed the piece, but once I release it and once I ask all these people to be part of it, it's not mine anymore.
Right.
It belongs to all of us, because we all, putting a piece of our time, energy into it. And that was the magical part also with Mucaro, which I Godframe had it too,
right?
But it was just in a smaller scale,
yeah. And
especially since Grandma took over in a way from the year one, and then year two she transitioned. So a lot of the energy was for her, and we witnessed that. But Mucaro what was so magical about it was that we gave him a soul. But it was a collection of souls, because we all got something out of it.
Right.
And we all move on into our lives thinking that, Mucaro, yeah, it goes on fire. Oh, wow, that was amazing. And say, okay, what are we doing now? Everybody back home? And then we discovered that it still had another life.
Yeah. No, That's so interesting. Yeah, just allowing the fluidity of it. Like when people are describing this thing, because I'm very much on the same boat with you. Like I found that the experiences and the art becomes so much more interesting and exciting the more other people's energies are involved in it. Where I've finally achieved like this place in my own personal artist journey where like I look for that before I even begin. Like before I even start sketching out the ideas of what we're working on, I'm already like planning for other people's twists to take it around. And you know what it makes me think about? It makes me think about the other kind of artist. And mind you, like I've yet to interview one on this show specifically because I feel like maybe it's the burner aesthetic that's connected to community. But the other kind of artist that I'm thinking about is like your James Cameron type, who like famously will rip you a new asshole on set if you do like anything that's like stepped away from what he wants, you know. But like he could argue like look at the kind of magic, the timeless magic that we've created, but it's mine.
Yeah.
You don't get to come in and say I want, you know, XYZ. Mind you, I've never worked with James Cameron, but like that's a story that seems to come off the set.
I think that once you have to allow yourself to have those imperfect moments and allow. That's how we all learn at the same time, and mistakes can be the best thing ever happen into the piece.
Life is imperfection.
Yeah, so that you have to allow, you know, once you get trapped into that have to be perfect. I think that's when you start losing the track of the journey.
Right.
For example, you know, I know that you want to talk in a moment about it, but Puerto Rico's Mucaro, it's to me is not about how aesthetically it's going to look. It's more about what is going to happen with the journey, with the people that are going to be doing it with me in
Absolutely. That was my next question was actually going to be what did your parents think of Burning Man? what did like when you showed grandma the photos, what did she think of? She's like, what is this place?
So grandma didn't think much of it. Grandma just was like more interested in the fact that I made something for her.
Yeah.
And she saw how many people enjoyed it and all the pictures, and she smiled a lot about that and was very touched by that. My parents, for the longest time, they just thought that I was just gone for a week and don't try to call me. I'm not going to be around. That was they thought, oh, there goes Nino camping in the desert, you know?
Yeah. What is this desert shit? The beach is where you should be going.
But when I got framed and my mom started seeing the press that, you know, we started getting from being there after the facts and all the other art, you know, there's wonderful art on the playa and wonderful artists, and that she started like just being in her head, scratching her head, like, okay, so what is happening at Burning Man? Of course, it took me some time to finally get her to ask me questions, but now she's like all into it, and like she's just very happy and excited. She was mad at me that I burned Mucaro, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
She's like, so pretty.
I know. Well, you know, it's the fascinating thing is like the note that I was just making for myself, because this is what we want to get into right now. When you were building Mucaro, like when the design came to you, did you? I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you couldn't have predicted that it was going to like live on like the way that it has after you burned it. You know, this is something that's like developed recently. Can you talk about what that process was like how you went through the design process? Did you just start sketching things? You just kind of knew you wanted an owl?
So yes, the design process started in God Frame happened in 2015 for the first time. At the end of 2015, I was already designing Mucaro.
Yeah.
I always wanted the head to turn 360. I wanted for people to be able to go in. I always thought that it was going to be a big wheel in the middle, that it was going to be moving the head. Again, I don't have any kind of architectural engineering kind of background, but I found people that do. And they help me still see my vision. Okay, I understand what you want to do, but we need to modify it to this kind of way, and that was a part of the design process that I'm very happy that I was open to the possibilities, because they knew my crew knew what was my ultimate goal.
Right.
But it was depending on, like, this is the ultimate goal, but I also have to know that because I want a wheel in the middle of the head, perhaps that's not the best solution for the head to turn 360.
Right.
And there was the times where it's like, oh, maybe the floor turns, and it's like, maybe we're gonna decapitate some people as soon as they go. So there's, you start looking at it, saying, no, that's not gonna work. Maybe this, the screen door, oh no, that's not gonna work. And you start like figure out what will be the best possibilities. I mean, we're still learning, and we learn a lot from even that the Mucaro that went to Burning Man. And as the time went by, it looked really wonderful. It was very magical, and I'm really happy how the community received it. Burn night comes. I cried all day. I kept telling the crew, please, if you see me off, just understand that I'm having a really interesting time. A lot of people thought that I was going to regret or
burning it.
Burning it. Like they thought, oh, Nino is having second thoughts. Yeah. It was more that my process was the letting go. I was going through the process very deeply. And I remember when I finally broke down, and that was it. Was just when we were putting all the wood inside, and I went to the head, and people in the community had used Mucaro as their temple.
Yeah.
And they left notes, or they had left stuff for the loved ones inside Mucaro. And that was so touching to me that I just broke down. And it was, I can remember coming down and telling the crew, thank you very much for this experience. And the whole crew came and hugged me. We had this big hug group. It was really neat, as I'm like crying in the middle of all of them. And then we went back to camp, and to get ready to burn. We burned it. I remember seeing it, and it was epic. There's pictures of me looking at a Mucaro burning. And interesting enough, people say, would you cry? And say, no, there was a big smile on my face. Like I don't think I've ever seen a picture of me smiling that big. Like it was like ugly smile, like and we did it, and we went back, and we were ready to enjoy and have an amazing time enjoying our
Hi.
It's okay. Enjoying our burn,
right?
And also when we get returned to the default world, enjoying the glory and the victory and the love that happened within all of us. And we return. We're starting to do that, and 2 weeks later, the hurricanes hit Puerto Rico, and my whole energy and priorities just shifted completely. Like I was so ready to continue partying about Mucaro for a very long time.
It was your victory lap.
Yes. And it all stopped. It was, my heart stopped thinking about my family, my friends, my childhood friends, everyone that I known since I was a kid and that lived in the island. So, it's just interesting how one thing just happens in one moment and everything just shifts differently.
Because that was sort of almost like, it's interesting because the burning of things at Burning Man, that's sort of the message is, the consistent agreement is that the message is about the impermanence of all things. And then all of a sudden, reality reminded you of that.
Yes.
Very quickly.
And then on top of that, so we not being in communication with my family, communication was so difficult at times.
Did the phones just cut out a lot when you guys tried to call each other?
Yes. And there were people driving to Little Hills to try to get some reception. And then I remember my friends sending me pictures of them with 20 other cars around them. Everybody's on their phone trying to communicate with their loved ones, to let them know that they're alive, to let them know that they're okay, and to also let them know, hey, you know what, this is what I'm going to do, their plans. We right away, there's a small but very powerful Puerto Rican community in Los Angeles. They started thinking forward, and we created a drive in Los Angeles. I helped this couple organizations.
Were you already connected to the community here? Or did like the word come out to Puerto Ricans in LA to come together?
I knew few Puerto Ricans that I knew that what they were doing, so I connected with them to be part of it. So one thing is, one of my best friends, she was actually one of the voices for this organization. So she asked me for help. At the time, she was pregnant, 8 months pregnant. So she needed, it's like, I want to do this, but you have to understand. And sure enough, she was actually packing boxes with me in the storage, and her and I, we just did this, together. I mean, with a bunch of other people. We don't want to take the complete credit, but with a bunch of other people. But her and I, we were organizing most of it. With her husband, and once the time comes to send the donations to Puerto Rico, they find that how difficult it is to bring stuff to Puerto Rico at the time.
Specifically because of the difficulties, like the logistics, or
the logistics, the ports closed.
Right.
There was everything was backed out. The original plan, there was going to be a plane that was going to arrive with all these donations.
Yeah.
By the way, we collected 140 pallets full of donations.
Wow. Yeah.
Only in Los Angeles. I'm sure that there were other people that donated, and I saw a lot of other people, other groups that brought stuff. So now is the process to try to get it there. That was even not as easy as just sending it UPS.
Yeah.
And at the time, like I mentioned to you, she was 8 months pregnant, and she wanted to make sure that things were arriving on time or arriving to the right places in Puerto Rico, because you had all this you see on the news and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I offered, and I went to Puerto Rico. The hurricane happened in September. And I was in Puerto Rico at beginning of November to receive all those donations, and then make sure that they went around the island and distributed them around the island. And I met a bunch of community leaders in Puerto Rico that I still very much keep in touch with.
Did you just like take time off work over here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I basically, that was my job.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a silly question, but like my first thought is like, how do you pay rent?
And
when you're in the middle of saving
and I hear you. I mean, it's the amazing part about the film industry that I'm part of, the production design. Sometimes I get this kind of work where I save all this money,
right,
and then I'm able to then create my art.
Yeah.
So I was basically using my art as a backup. Also, we created this Mucaro for Puerto Rico back then to help, with the donations make it to Puerto Rico.
Right.
And that helped a lot too. But it was, again...
Can you talk a little bit about that concept? Like, how did that idea come about to build sort of the community around this art piece?
So I go there, like I mentioned to you. I distribute all that donations and met all these amazing community leaders. Once I'm on the flight flight back, I realized that I didn't feel like my job in Puerto Rico was done.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I needed to do something else, or how can I figure this out? So on my plane ride from Puerto Rico back to Los Angeles, I decided to apply for the Global Grant.
With Burners Without Borders?
Burners Without Borders. I was connected, thanks to Mariam Goodwill, I was connected to Burners Without Borders.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to apply for the global grant, and I decided to go ahead and say, you know what? What if I actually make a version of Mucaro in Puerto Rico, and it's going to be built from the rubbles and the destruction from the hurricane to give another life to this destruction, and at the same time create some trauma relief for the community and people to see that the possibilities are endless once you actually put your mind to it. Especially, once it's really difficult sometimes to explain to people what the people in the island went through. I didn't go through it, but still, I just returned from there. People talk about the hurricane like it just happened yesterday.
Yeah.
People in the airport, as we were flying to Puerto Rico, my partner and I were on chairs in Florida, and the two girls behind us, they were talking about where they were the night of the hurricane.
Wow.
So even though that has been a year later, the thought process does not change. And that, to me personally, I feel that we might not be seeing it right away, but through the years, I think that there is going to be a situation where some, especially the youth in Puerto Rico, was very affected. And one of the things I like to do through Mucaro for Puerto Rico is to create an environment where we're empowering these people, whether they're youth, whether they're children, whether they're older. It doesn't really matter. Is the idea to empower them to the possibilities. They didn't end that day in September.
Right.
It has to continue. You got to find your goals. You got to find your bliss.
Yeah.
And continue creating it.
I feel like what you're describing right now, and a lot of like the work that you've been doing around this movement, is so interesting. Like it feels like it was so much more empowered by the fact that you did burn Mucaro on Playa. Like if you'd like taken it apart and brought it back, it wouldn't have the same energy, because what was making the note that I was making in my journal was that it was kind of like earlier when you went to Machu Picchu and you're searching for this energy and you couldn't quite find it, and then you found it there, the temple on Playa. It's almost like you did the same kind of thing where like the energy of Mucaro, the soul of Mucaro is like what you're kind of communicating to the world is timeless. The structure can be burned, it can be rebuilt from damages, it can be popped up all over the world, taken apart, whatever, but like the soul of it, the energy survives no matter what. It doesn't matter what physical thing hits it.
Interesting. We started calling him Mucaro Lives On.
Yeah.
And that was the joke in between us. It's like Mucaro Lives On, because we were seeing all these people enjoying Mucaro, and this is before the hurricane. Like Mucaro Lives On, Mucaro Lives On. That was actually our hashtag at one point. Because
the call to action.
Yeah, because people were still feeling it and enjoying it and telling us the stories that they felt or they experienced through this installation. And that was actually a catalyst for me personally, because it's like, okay, if I'm able to do this for the burner community, and also my personal, burner community, my camp, why am I not doing this for my people in Puerto Rico?
Right.
I'm not trying to replicate what happened at Burning Man in 2017. I don't think that will ever happen. But if I can bring that kind of love and that kind of, empowerment to the people there,
right,
and have the opportunity to do so, that's my goal right now. And one of the things that my architect, Ilanit, she kept saying, maybe this was the destination all along. That, Mucaro at Burning Man, yes, it was great, but their destination for it was all along, it was to be going to Puerto Rico.
Absolutely. And all I can think about too is that it's so magical that it was a son of Puerto Rico that ended up like going back with the art piece from Burning Man. Like, we've seen a few other projects. Like there's, where like somebody who's never even lived there, like goes back with an art project and wants to build, like, it's great. Like nothing but good stuff comes out of all of this. I'm just saying that in your particular adventure, your particular story, it's such like triple the impact as a result of where you came from and then where you went and then where you went back to.
Well, I appreciate that. The one thing that I really want to make sure that people understand is that I want to do something for them. And just because it's a year later, our job is not over.
Yeah.
You know, it's still, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of help that can be still happening there. I call Mukaro my little grain of salt. But at the same time, it's like, I hope that it can impact a lot of people in the island. And also even the people that are going to be helping from United States, you know, to go there and help me out. I mean, we're not bringing the whole crew.
Right.
But the people that I think that the people that are going to go and help me out, you know, Scott, Ilanit, Tommy, those people are going to, I mean, my partner Evan, we're all going to have something that we're going to take from that
Absolutely.
experience. Just like we did it when we had it in the playa, it continues.
Yeah.
It continued. It never dies.
Yeah. You just got back from there. How long ago? 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Okay.
2 weeks ago.
I know because we were talking earlier in the year about recording this episode.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
Get back.
So yeah, I just returned. On top of, you know, other so Mukaro for Puerto Rico has been such an amazing catalyst to other organizations being interested in what I'm doing for the island. And one of them is an organization called Project Backboard, where they remodel basketball courts. But instead of just remodeling it like just any kind of basketball courts, the flooring becomes a big, gigantic mural.
Right.
So I went with them to introduce them to or show them different basketball courts around the island. And we found one, so we're in the process of figuring out that. So I've been asked to be the designer of that big mural on the floor. And top of that, I also went to have meetings with a location that I've been talking to for almost a year. But I felt like, you know, it's time for us to meet in person, shake hands, give hugs, and also for them to know me and my energy and my style. And that's the Ricky Martin Foundation in Loíza. And we locked that location, and that's where we're going to be building it in hope that our hopes are in between March and May of next year.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry, the Ricky Martin Foundation locked the location for you, or they had the space?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Ricky Martin Foundation has a location in the town of Loíza.
Okay.
Pretty much is similar to a school, which is great because what we're trying to continue doing is to bring knowledge to the island. The other part that I forgot to tell you, another piece of the Mukaro for Puerto Rico, is that the idea is that we're building this structure to be the centerpiece of a classroom to talk about sustainable energy.
Wow. Okay.
So it's all about trying to continue the education legacy to people in Puerto Rico and continue having that conversation that is not the norm yet. Yeah. And I hope that at some point in the future becomes something normal in Puerto Rico.
Which part is not the norm? I'm sorry.
Sustainable energy.
Okay.
It gets touched here and there, but then everybody gets distracted about how expensive it is, and we don't think that we can do this, or we can. And to be honest, I believe that it's all by education. If we educate the people to understand that it's such a valuable thing to do now, in the long run, it's going to be the same amount of money that you're spending on buying a generator, taking care of a generator, putting gas in a generator. You know, like I kept saying, do you want to do 14 hours at a gas station to get $10?
Yeah.
Then let's just find other options. Yeah. You know,
when people give that example, it always makes me think of like, wouldn't it be easier just to like eat healthy rather than spend more money on doctor's bills later?
Yes. But again, I think it's education. You have to share that knowledge. I'm not a professional in it. I'm an artist, but if I can use my art as a vehicle for them to learn more about it, and then I'm going to learn about it, that for me, it's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal to me, I mean, I have my dad when I went right after the hurricanes happened, this is then a year ago. I was talking to him, and at one point he had just put gas on the generator.
Yeah.
Because now everybody has a generator, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, yes.
No. I wanted to ask about that.
Oh, yeah. No, everybody has a generator,
Yeah,
yes.
putting gas in.
And the thing is that, the one thing that I explained this to my dad, I said, generators are not meant to work 24/7.
Right.
They're for emergency cases. It's not a lifestyle.
Or for hanging out in the desert for a week.
Yes. It's not a lifestyle.
Yeah.
You don't live.
Really?
Yeah. So
they're looking, the population's looking for ways to live off the grid. It's like the easiest way to say it. But we're so used to it with the American grid that now they've had God hand them this this jarring realization.
Seriously,
you can't rely on it.
Well, what you have to remember. What they're trying to do is the instant gratification. What is actually going to create energy right now?
Right.
I need it right now. I can be waiting for it to. Especially at the time, to be receiving it, to get installed. It was rainy season. It's just very difficult situation back then. So yes, they went to the generator, the resources of the generator. Yeah. I'm not. I'm not.
Can't blame them.
I can blame them. No, I cannot blame them. But what I would like to do is to also show them other options.
Yeah.
You can go back to the generator if you want to.
Yeah.
That's not for me. But can I show you that there's other possibilities that, especially what the part that I was telling you just now of my dad. My dad passes by me after going to put gas in the generator, and he says to me, "Don't light a match." Exactly. Yeah. So, and even though that is really funny,
it's funny. Yeah. It's terrifying.
It is terrifying, and at the same time, it's like my dad is 78.
Yeah. And these accidents happen when people are the least paying attention, when it becomes totally routine.
Well, and then it's like, here, my dad at 78, do I want him smelling fumes every day?
Yeah.
Do I want him to be dealing with a generator? So there's things that, and my parents, there was a lot of areas where, yes, they got power quite quickly or, in a good manner. Mm-hmm. My parents did not receive power until the following year. And this happened in September.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Because that was the thing that, we heard so much about on the news for a week. About Puerto Rico not having power and not having clean water.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's just very quickly, the amount of insanity that's happening in this country right now just overflowed, made it disappear.
That's exactly what happens. It's like one disaster happens, and then the other disaster happens, and you forget about
the juicier, Washington D.C. bullshit gossip is what has everybody's attention.
Well, that, and at the same time that's why I'm trying to also create awareness that Puerto Rico is still struggling.
Yeah,
even though that this last trip, one thing that I noticed is that it's a lot cleaner, a lot cleaner. Things look like they're functioning.
The community got together and worked on it. Yeah.
But you still see a lot of businesses close.
Right.
A lot of business completely abandoned because probably they don't have enough money to put it back together.
Wow.
The amount of exile that happened in Puerto Rico.
A lot of people moved. They were like, we can't fix this.
There was a lot of people that were ill that had to move. There was no way to take care of them in the island. And a lot of times it's like once they did that whole process of moving them to the States to try to move them back, it's a whole other process.
Right.
The number of death that, at first it was such a small number, and then it went to thousands. And it's true. You never see it. You might have not seen it that day when it happened, but from the lack of power, the lack of resources, the lack of water, clean water.
Right.
Do you get all this either diseases or problems, health problems, especially in the older people? The older generation is depending on a lot of these medications or a lot of this electricity or power. And we started seeing how many people, and that also was a catalyst to the fact that I think a lot of people start their self-esteem or their spirit starts to break.
Yeah.
And my hopes are that Mucaro for Puerto Rico, it's another way to also bring that hope back or that strength back and empower them to continue believing and continue their process of what they want to do, whether it's in the island or not.
Right.
I'm going back to the island because I have that opportunity right now at my age, but there's a lot of people don't have that kind of resources or that kind of opportunity, and I completely respect that. But do your part.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day. I hope that I send the message that is, as long as we all do our part, when everybody does their part, there's a big part done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, spoken like a true burner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like we created Bucaro with a great teams.
Right.
That doesn't mean that Puerto Rico can get better with a great team.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's I think it's really quite magical, like what you're doing with art and with bringing awareness to the challenges that the Puerto Rican community is experiencing, because it's like we were saying earlier, it's very easy for us to get distracted by the next shiny object. But the real sustainable conversation is that when it's more like when it's more of a conversation rather than a shouting match.
Correct.
And like, when you look at like mainstream media news stuff, like with them, it's just like a shouting match. Who can shout louder in order to get your attention so that we can get you switched over to our news station so that we can show you commercials, right? Whereas like the way that you're able to approach it as an artist with this beautiful piece of art that you've created, I almost want to say that you've discovered. It's almost like the energy existed already.
I
and
like that.
Yeah,
I like
you channeled it into this owl, right? And it's this wonderful opportunity to have a conversation and to continue the conversation.
Absolutely.
Rather than just like shout until you get tired and then move on. So the conversation continues. More people are involved in it as a result. Mucaro is like a mascot for the conversation. So
Yes.
it's a symbol that reminds you the conversation's still happening. It's
Yeah.
really amazing. This is, I think, like any artist's dream would be to contribute to their community the way that you are able to right now.
Well, thank you. I really believe that, it's so funny that you said that, because I can bring the knowledge of sustainable energy and repurposing materials and all that, but it's up to them to what they want to do with that knowledge after. Me telling them what to do and how to do it or when to do it, that's never gonna get anywhere.
Yeah,
What happens when you do that? You actually block all kinds of knowledge or kinds of communication, because don't tell me what to do.
Right.
It's like I'd rather just do it in a very subtle kind of way, that while we're building and putting this Mucaro for Puerto Rico together, why not talk about solar power? Why not talk about wind power while we're actually doing it?
Yeah.
And that way we can have an exchange of thoughts, process, and we can then create, because all I need to do is to spark the curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like put it down their throat. If my dad wants to continue putting gas on that generator, that's up to him. I'm not going to try to change him. But
Winning an argument doesn't solve anything.
No, not at all.
If anything, people just dig in their heels more.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that's what we know, right? That we know that knowledge that's what happens. It's like, especially even when you try to talk about politics with anybody,
Right.
and you try to express your point, and the other person tries to express their point. If there's a communication, an exchange of knowledge and points, I'm all for it, because I think that's the kind of like communication we should have. If you're gonna tell me that I'm right and you're wrong, and or vice versa, it doesn't go anywhere.
Absolutely. And I think it's really, really quite beautiful and amazing that they were amused to you creating this art, and then now you're able to be amused to them in creating dialogue.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. I mean, I'm really, the part that I'm most excited about is to continue inspiring people there. I feel like we got inspired through the Mucaro that went to the playa,
Right.
like past that inspiration to them will be such an amazing goal in my part.
Right.
And especially, my mom is going to be very happy about that because this one she's going to be able to see.
Yeah. And you're not burning it down.
And not burning it down. I mean, I don't want to duplicate our Mucaro for the playa at all. I mean, especially because I don't even know what kind of materials we're going to find.
Right.
But again, it's about the journey. It's not so much about how aesthetically it's going to look at the end. Of course, I'm going to make it look good.
Yeah.
But
Duh.
but I don't want that to be our ultimate goal. It's more about the journey that I can actually bring this the community in Puerto Rico with me through a learning process.
When are you going to start building it?
So we're releasing the crowdfunding hopefully by the end of this month. It will be on our website, leaveittonino.com.
Yeah.
That's my plugin.
Yeah. There you go.
yeah. Leave it to Nino. Nino is Nino. .com, and we are going to put things for other ways for people to be able to contribute, whether it's financially or in-kind donations, ways to get involved in Puerto Rico. Especially, we're looking for alliances with more sustainable energy kind of organizations that are that have been something have sparked in their minds to bring some sort of knowledge to the island. Perhaps this could be a way to get it there. And just continue sharing our story, sharing our support, because like I mentioned to you, Puerto Rico, it's just the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
The process is that the rebuild part first was like when everybody was shocked and what are we to do and release, receiving all these donations. Now it's all about rebuild.
Yeah.
And we have to rebuild not just the structural, but it needs to be rebuilt also part of their soul and their mind needs to be part of that rebuild.
Right. So you didn't go to the Burn this year. I mean, it's possible you're not going next year as well, because I imagine you'll be busy with this.
So I had the opportunity to go to Early Man, and I got to experience the playa this last year. At least I was there and I touched the playa, and yes, there was no art.
How long were you there at Early Man?
29 hours.
Okay. All right.
Yes, it was a little crazy, but 29 hours, and I made them count.
Yeah.
For those who've been to the playa, I fell out of my bike twice.
Yeah, nice.
I got chapped lips in 29 hours. And I fell asleep on the playa.
Nice.
And I snore. I apparently, my friends told me that I was snoring pretty loud. So I think I did pretty well for 29 hours.
You packed like the whole weekend there and went like one day. Nice.
Yes. So I planned, because we skipped basically the event week this year, a lot of the people from Mucaro crew didn't go either. We went to Utopia instead. A lot of people, a lot of our crew went to Utopia. This next year, we all want to come back. We'll see what happens. I've been also in ideas to design the temple at some time in the future. I'd like to start playing with that idea.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on it. Maybe do. Well, now you're quoting me on it. What am I saying?
Now there's thousands of people that are aware. So, whoops.
I have been having conversations.
By the way, we don't edit anything on the show.
That's fine. I've been having. It's good to put it out there because I think that main reason why you have to put it out there is this. And then you start believing that you can manifest. So there's that possibility or that idea that I have in mind to design the temple with a Latino flair.
Yeah. It's about time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if it's the temple or maybe even a smaller scale kind of art installation, we're definitely planning on doing that. I also apply for a movable art installation called La Wincha. It's a school bus that will take people in different bus stops around the playa to different art installations, or at least talk about how to behave with art installations and how to, what is expected.
Oh, that's cool.
In a way because, as years pass by, there's a lot of times that you lose track of like, hey,
Yeah.
we built this beautiful art piece here for you, but please take care of it
Sure,
nicely
yeah.
because the next person would like to enjoy it as well.
And we have more newer people than ever. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that I like the idea to continue.
Brilliant.
I think is the whole education thing that is happening in my life. Maybe it's a phase that I'm going through. But I like it a lot and I'm enjoying it.
I mean, it sounds like the education thing, something you've been going through a long time.
Yes. But perhaps it's like what my mom,
Yeah.
what I inherit from my mom.
Yeah.
My brother and my sister got my dad.
Yeah.
I got my mom.
Good. That's excellent.
Yes.
No, those are all brilliant ideas.
Thank you
Yeah, I
very
love it.
much. Thank you.
I'm very much hoping that you do get into the temple thing because I'm looking forward to that being the next time that we record a show.
Thank you very
So
much.
talking about that.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for everything. Not just you're doing for the burner community, but for the Puerto Rican community, for the world community, for the artist community. I mean, holy shit! You've done a lot of shit for a lot of communities. So, absolutely, this has been
Appreciate that.
absolutely my honor to sit with you, and thank you so much for everything. And this is awesome. Absolutely one of my favorite conversations.
Oh my God! Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I'm feeling the vibes, and thank you. I appreciate for the time to be able to share this with our community, and by any means, if anybody out there is interested to contact me, get inspired, I'm always open to the possibilities to continue inspiring other artists that want to bring art to the playa. That's something that I've been wanting to do.
Yeah.
There were a few art installations that contacted me thanks to Mukaro this year, and I was able to help them out with the lighting or
Yeah.
the burn program or anything in that kind of world. So I really appreciate the fact that I'm able to continue sharing my voice and sharing all this wonderful news, because I think that what is going to happen next is just going to continue beaming me even higher.
Absolutely. It's leaveittonino.com.
LeaveItToNino.com.
Yeah.
Yes. And then any other kind of hashtag is that too.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nino.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You are now listening to the sounds of New York City-based kind of a duo, Tony Wynot and Kate Stein. This set was recorded at the 1001 Nights Camp at Burning Man 2018. And hey, how international is today's show? Tony and Kate are from Europe and Australia. They're in New York City. Nino's Puerto Rican. He's in LA. Their host is Persian. Anyway, you can listen to this whole set at soundcloud.com/Tony-Mukke. That's spelled TONY-MUKKE. And you can also follow Kate. She's over at soundcloud.com/Kate Stein NYC, like New York City. Their booking email, by the way, is TonyMeetsKate@gmail, which was really cool. And I really think Tony Meets Kate should be like their official duo name. I think it's a really cool sounding name. Go to leaveittonino.com and stay tuned on how you can help contribute to the Mukaru for Puerto Rico campaign. Please give us a like on Facebook and join the Facebook group, and leave us a review on iTunes. All these links are over at burnerpodcast.com. You can find me at all these social medias at Mr. Arash. That's MRARASH. If you are sending me a friend request, please do send me a message and let me know that you're a listener and not a spam bot. I have this giant list of friend requests, and it's hard to figure out who's who. So send me a message. Even if you already sent me a request, send me a message so I know who you are. And let me know if you have interesting interview subjects in your neck of the woods. I might come your way and sleep on your futon and drink all your kombucha. It's looking like I'll be making my way to Africa Burn, thanks in no small part to our listener Paul, who reached out. I'm really looking forward to many hugs and adventures and new beginnings and new transitions. Today's episode was produced by Lee Hemingway, along with associate producer Louis Galipeau. Our production team includes Tori Massey and Navjit Sarna. New shows are back to being up on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. We experimented on doing it on the weekends. It just didn't quite work out. So, harder date. First and third Wednesdays of the month. We're back to that. The show is available on all the podcast platforms. Our opening theme music, America's Horse with No Name remix, is produced by Joanne. You can find him over at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. We love you, dear listeners. Until next time, love and light and all that other crap. Take us out, Tony Wynot and Kate Stein.
Nothing I can gain. Gotta get out of here. Nothing I can gain. Gotta get out of here. Problems in my way, driving me insane. Nothing I can gain. Gotta get out of here. Gotta get out of here. Gotta get out of here. Let me make it clear. Gotta get out of here. Passing by, make me wanna cry. Never ask me why. Gotta get out of here. Just one of those nights. Wanna put my world to rights. I'm not running from a fight. Just gotta get out of here. Gotta get out of here. Let me make it clear. Nothing left to fear. Gotta get out of here.
Can you feel what I feel? Can you feel how I feel? bombers and congas and ride. slow them down. Give me a call on my cell phone, please.
burnerpodcast.com.